Malcolm, thanks for having us here in your beautiful offices in Auckland. Look, everyone kind of knows the iconic Huntly site, but there's obviously a lot more to the Genesis portfolio these days. Can you probably start by just telling us about what the business looks like today and some of those key assets you've got around the country?
Yeah, sure. First of all, welcome. It's fantastic to be able to have the opportunity to talk to you. Genesis is made up of three parts. We have a very big customer position, around about 500,000 customers across New Zealand.
Right.
And that's made up of everything from homes through to small businesses through to large industrials. But that's really the anchor point of Genesis, is our large customer position. We have very loyal customers. They've been with us for a long period of time, and they're very attracted to our brand. The second part of Genesis is our renewable energy generation, and that's anchored by our 3 hydro lakes. They produce about half of our electricity every year, and a lot of people don't associate hydro with Genesis, but our lakes are quite unique. They're spread across New Zealand. We have 2 in the North Island and 1 in the South Island. Waikaremoana, which is one of the most beautiful lakes in New Zealand. We have the Central Plateau, so the Tongariro Power Scheme, which comes from a number of different water sources around the central North Island and accounts for about 20% of the water that flows down the Waikato River. And then in the South Island we have Lake Tekapo, which most people know. It's iconic. It's part of the canal system, flows down into the Waitaki system before heading out to sea. So that's about half of our energy. We also have a number of PPAs on renewables. So we have a wind PPA at Waipipi in Taranaki, and we have a geothermal PPA in the central North Island at Tauhara. And together the hydros and the renewables PPAs make up about half to 60% of our total energy. And then of course we have the iconic Huntly Power Station. Yeah. And Huntly is genuinely unique in New Zealand. For a start, it's New Zealand's largest site of electricity generation. It can generate more electricity than the dams on the Waitaki system can, and it's made up of different parts. We have gas turbines, we have coal and gas turbines, and we're just installing a large battery system at Huntly as well. But the most unique aspect of Huntly is it's the only place in New Zealand that has a workforce that can run those types of assets.
Okay. Yeah, and let's start with the uniqueness, because I think that's probably something that is a little bit misunderstood. Is relative to some of your peers, your portfolio is quite unique. And if we think about Huntly and the fact that you've got North Island generation versus some of the others, that is a big point of difference and quite a big positive, isn't it?
Absolutely. The majority of our generation is close to the main population centres in New Zealand, and obviously, so that means we're transmitting over shorter distances. And the big dimension of our generation portfolio, which is different to everybody else, is the flexibility in it. So we can store more energy in reserve than any other gentailer in New Zealand. So when you look at our FY25 earnings, they were very resilient. And that was because we're able to switch Huntly on when it's dry and not much wind, and off when it's wet and there's lots of wind. And so because of our very big customer demand position, we can flex our margin between retail and wholesale very easy depending on the rain and wind cycles of New Zealand.
Yeah. And one of the things you've done recently is, or the market has done, is recognise the value of that flexibility you've got, particularly at Huntly. Just remind us of the agreements you've sort of got to there with some of your peers.
Well, we were very clear that assets at Huntly would go into retirement if the market didn't need them.
Yeah.
Now, winter 2024, a lot of our competitors got caught out and unable to generate the electricity that they'd sold. That wasn't the case for Genesis. We were able to generate all the electricity we sold on our own generation. That's why our earnings remained resilient. And so what we've done for the third Rankine, there are 3 Rankine units at Huntly Power Station. They can run on coal and gas and biomass. We've come to an agreement with Meridian, Mercury and Contact Energy for them to pay for those assets to be on standby for the next decade. We call them Huntly firming options.
Right.
And what that means is they pay an annual premium to Genesis to have that Rankine on standby.
So basically for optionality.
It's optionality.
Yeah.
And so we're sharing some of our flexibility with our competitors. In return, what it means is if it's raining really heavily, we're still getting paid for that Rankine unit. Yeah. Whereas in the past, if the Rankine unit wasn't running, we weren't getting paid for it.
And the big, I guess, the elephant in the room at the moment is the government's review of the sector. For someone that hasn't kept as close an eye on it and hasn't been right across the detail, how would you describe sort of the big picture key pillars that have come out of that?
Well, I think there's some fundamentals in electricity in New Zealand that are a bit like gravity. You can overcome them for short periods of time, but they're eventually going to bring you down to earth.
Right.
And for New Zealand, that is the fact that we rely on wind and rain to generate a lot of our electricity. As a small island nation, when you get big high pressure systems over the country, you don't get rain, you don't get wind. So energy security in the electricity system has become more valuable, and it's now selling at much more of a premium than it was. And the government's review of the electricity system and the announcements they've made reflects that energy security is a priority that we haven't really taken seriously as a country up until now.
Right.
And so we welcome the opportunity to engage with the government on their new regime around long duration firming, which are Huntly firming options in our case. And what that means is that the responsibility for energy security that has traditionally been on Genesis's shoulders is going to be spread right across the sector. And so we see more opportunity than risks in the government announcements. And we certainly see an opportunity for us to be able to deliver our strategy much faster and to much greater benefit to our shareholders.
Yeah, and there's kind of a balancing act between being highly renewable as a country and having reliability, isn't it? And so if you're highly renewable, you rely on rain and wind and those things, you kind of, the reliability falls away, doesn't it? So is it just trying to strike that balance over the next few years?
Think of it like brakes in your car.
Yeah.
If you want to drive faster, you need better brakes.
Yeah.
So if you want a higher renewable grid in New Zealand, you need more security on standby. So even if we get to 95% renewable electricity, there will still be periods of time when the wind isn't there and the rain isn't there, where up to 10 to 12% of New Zealand's electricity will come from thermal backup. And so fuel transition in that thermal backup is a critical element of how you come to a lower emissions and secure grid in the future. And that's really the role of Huntly firming options and the biomass work that we're doing at the moment.
That's good. Good point, actually, is that, at the moment we think of Huntly and we think of coal piles, but you're doing a lot of work behind the scenes around biomass. Just quickly describe to us what biomass effectively is and where we are on that journey of potentially firing biomass through Huntly versus coal.
Yep. So biomass, think of it like dehydrated charcoal. Essentially, it is wood that's been turned into charcoal, and almost all of the water's been taken out of it. And that allows us to use what we call short cycle carbon. So if you cut a tree down, turn it into biomass and burn it and plant a tree at the same time, then the carbon is going in a neutral short cycle. With coal, it's long cycle carbon. So the trees were grown millions of years ago, they fell down, they turned themselves into coal, we extract it and we put that carbon back into the atmosphere. And so we're moving to short cycle carbon fuels, which means that we can get to a carbon neutral position. So we're not making the problem worse anymore. And that's the first step in actually making it better. But ultimately, if you have a high renewables grid, you have two options. You can overbuild your renewables, and that's where your security comes from.
Yep.
Or you can have a lower carbon thermal backup regime. Now in New Zealand, because we're small, overbuilding renewables will never get us to full energy security. In addition, the cost to consumers of a renewables overbuild is about 10% extra on your power bills every year,
Right.
compared to having some thermal backup.
And when you say overbuild, that's kind of effectively like building the motorway so wide that it's never going to get congested. You'll hardly use it to that capacity.
Correct.
Is that sort of what you mean by
It's
overbuild?
exactly
It's just
like that.
having
It's
having
exactly
a lot of
like that.
capacity that sits
Yep.
there doing nothing, but someone's
Yep.
going to pay for that.
That's right. At the end of the day, building stuff costs money.
Yeah.
New Zealand brings money in from overseas for that, and the cost of that money is the dividends we pay and the interest we pay as consumers and as businesses. And so if you want to use more of that international money, you have to pay more in dividends and interest. And so that ultimately gets passed on to consumers. So the cheaper way of doing it is to get to 95, 97% renewability, but accept that at times you're going to need some thermal resilience in the system.
Reliability. Yeah. There's been so much in the news around your sector at the moment, and everyone I talk to has a view, and I'm sure lots of different views, but is there anything that kind of sticks out to you in the sector that you think is probably a little bit misunderstood by the average punter when they think about the electricity market?
The electricity system is either 100% present or 0% present. You can't have an electricity system that is 80 or 90% there. It has to be there 100%. And that is one of the challenges, is you have to match demand and supply all the time, every day. No matter how much rain has come, no matter how much wind you do or don't have, or how much battery capacity you do or don't have, the system has to be in balance.
Yeah.
And so that is quite a complex thing to arrange at a country level. And as you bring in more distributed energy into the system, rooftop solar, household batteries, electric vehicles back to the grid, etc.,
Right.
you introduce volatility into that balance. And so the system is going to become harder and more complex to balance going forward. Now in Genesis, we're really leaning into that because that's really the role that we've played in the system for a long period of time. We're the largest distributed energy retailer in New Zealand. We have around 27,000 rooftop solar customers. About 14,000 of them have batteries. In January this year, 5% of our total electricity we purchased off rooftop solar customers. So that was a record for us, and I expect that record to continue to grow because we're adding about 250 rooftop solar customers a month, and we're learning how to make that volatility in the system work. And because we have Huntly and hydros that can flex hugely, we're very well positioned to be able to monetize rooftop solar and battery as it comes into the grid.
Yeah, in Aussie, they've obviously over the years subsidised rooftop solar, and it kind of made sense in places like WA where it's hot in the middle of the day, you run your aircon and you use the solar. Do you think it gets a lot further in New Zealand? Do you think it becomes mainstream that people have rooftop solar and the odd battery to help, sort of balance out their usage?
Over time, the difference in New Zealand to Australia is our hydro system.
Right.
So our hydro system is large and it's very flexible. In Australia, they don't have that. They largely run on thermal. And so as you incentivize people to use rooftop solar, you bring in much more volatility into the system.
Right.
And in New Zealand, we want to use our electricity mainly for breakfast and dinner, and solar delivers it for lunch. So that's a problem. And how that's played out in Australia is in the middle of the day, the cost of electricity can be minus $250.
Right.
But at dinner time, it can be plus $3,000. And so their volatility spread in Australia is becoming enormous.
Right.
And that's actually causing them problems. And so you have to be really careful, because the system always has to be balanced. You have to be careful not to put it out of balance, or you can get unintended consequences. Now, the market-driven system in New Zealand has delivered very cost-competitive electricity, very efficient use of capital for long periods of time.
Yeah. I think that's something I've always struggled to get my head around is, there is that demand. We wake up, we turn, the toaster on, we sort of turn the heating on, and then we go out for the day, whether it's to work or whatever else, and there's not a lot of usage, and then it's all loaded at night as well. But, to match, you hope it's windy at those periods, and it's certainly not always sunny or it's not peak, so it's quite hard. That balancing act is something we probably don't appreciate as much, sitting outside the sector to keep that going.
That's right, and we're learning as a sector where the energy is in the system. So you come and have your breakfast in the morning, you have a shower in the morning, you head out to work for the day. Your hot water cylinder keeps storing energy all through the day, and it doesn't need to. So one of the things we've done is rolled out a national automated hot water management system to our customers. Where we're now using predictive analytics, AI and data to be able to manage people's hot water cylinders to avoid over-consuming during the middle of the day and the middle of the night, and under-consuming at breakfast and dinner time, and that is proving exceptionally efficient.
Yeah. Tell me about my bill, because it always, I'm sure as many people watching this, I look at that and go, oh, Genesis or whoever is charging me more every year. And how does that actually break down? If my bill's $100 or something, love for it to be $100. I'm sure we all would. But how does it? Is it all you guys charging me for the generation of electricity, or is there other components in there? How does that look when you break it down?
If your bill's $100, about $32 of it is going to electricity,
right?
And about $68 is going to power lines and other charges, GST, those sorts of things across the system. So the percentage of your bill that relates to electricity itself is shrinking. Right. Because we need to build more infrastructure across New Zealand, and infrastructure charges are governed by the Commerce Commission. So they approve new charges about once every 5 years. So in the last 12 months, the increase in your bill, about 60% of it has come from those charges, from the Commerce Commission and lines charges. And even if electricity didn't go up at all in the next 12 months, your bill's still likely to go up by 10% because of those other charges. And so the percentage that relates to electricity itself is shrinking, and we expect it to continue to shrink down to about 20 to 22% by 2035. So most of what we charge is charges we're passing on from other companies, like powerline companies, Transpower, etc.
So that's so you generating, and whether it's Hunley, whether it's Tekapo, whether it's your other sites, that's only let's call it a third of what I'm paying is going to the generation of that. The rest is kind of the highway of that electricity getting to my house and the
cost of metering it at your house. Those sort of charges, plus you've got 15% GST in there. Those are the charges that make up the majority of your power bill these days.
Yeah. You talked about it getting even smaller by 2035, which, I think you've got a Gen 35 strategy out there. At the moment, I think, 50-60% renewable, and then you've got, the optionality for the flexibility for New Zealand with the rest. Tell us about what it looks like in 2035 if you tick all the boxes you're looking to tick. How does Genesis look to today?
Yep. So if you think about those three components of Genesis, our customer position, our renewables, and our flexible generation, basically today our customer position is around about 6 to 6.5 terawatt hours a year. Right. We expect that to grow by 1.5 to 2 terawatt hours by 2035. We've got around a 20% market share. That's very substantial in the New Zealand context. We are building around about $2.4 billion worth of new renewables between now and 2030. And by the time we get into the 2030s, we expect that our baseload generation will be something between 80 and 90% renewable. And then our flexible generation position of around about 1,300 megawatts, which is the largest flexible generation in New Zealand, will be able to balance that portfolio. So what that means is we will have a cost ceiling for generation costs, but no floor down to zero. And so our margin will be resilient through the next decade. And there's no other generation company in New Zealand or gentailer in New Zealand that can offer investors that proposition of that level of stability of earnings.
Right. And ultimately, it means you'll care less about a wet year, a dry year. You will be kind of agnostic to what's happening with sort of climatic conditions.
That's right. Yeah. And so ultimately, our portfolio is a portfolio where energy never stops. And as a result of that, earnings will never stop. They might fluctuate a bit, but they'll never stop. So we won't have a winter 24 type outcome as a company.
We hear lots over, we have for a long time now about data centers coming here and wanting to set up and be electricity users, and lots of other industries that want to sort of leverage the green sort of energy. Is that a genuine possibility? Like at the moment, it feels like we're struggling to just get our own house in order with the demand that we've got locally. Can you see a path to actually people wanting to come and invest big dollars here and use our clean energy?
The short answer is yes. We have an abundance of opportunity. The availability of that opportunity is probably more the question. So data centers come in three basic forms. you've got what they call a data center, which is just data. Then you've got a data center with computing functions on it, and then you've got a data center with AI capability.
Right.
Now, AI capability uses enormous amounts of electricity, and data only is kind of like adding light bulbs to the system. It's not massive at all. Now, what the data center operators are doing is they're setting up data centers in multiple countries around the world, because they can't shift the data centers, but they can shift the data.
Right.
And so suddenly, servicing data centers, you're in an international competition for electricity. And so they just shift the data to where the electricity is cheapest. And if the electricity goes up for 2 or 3 days in that area, they shift it to another jurisdiction.
Right.
So it adds enormous volatility into the system, and with that will come costs. So the short answer is we can meet the needs of data center operators and data centers in New Zealand, but it will have an effect on the stability of the network, depending on whether it's just plain data, data with compute, or whether it has AI in it or not.
You talked about, that sort of, let's call it 2/3 of the bill sort of being out of your control. You're just passing on costs that someone is passing on to you, whether it's transmission, the distribution lines, whatever else. What's the state of that? Like, we focus a lot about new wind farms, solar farms, batteries, generation, but what's the state of the distribution and the infrastructure sitting there? Are you comfortable with that as a generator, that it can get to the end user as it's intended to, or do we have a lot of work to do to kind of repair and fix and upgrade?
Yeah, so the government's done quite a lot of work in the consenting space.
Yeah.
And so consents are starting to accelerate, but grid connections are not.
Right.
And that is one of the challenges, is we do have to spend, this is not Transpower's issue, we do have to spend a lot of money, like billions of dollars, upgrading our superhighway for electrons to be able to generate and move those electrons around the country. So we're often asked, we have a consented wind farm in the Wairarapa, Castle Hill, it's 300 megawatts, it's ready to build. We'd build it tomorrow if we could, but we can't connect it to the grid. So until there's a grid connection, we can't connect that wind farm. So we have been asked, why are you sitting on it? Is it just to keep prices high? No, it's because we can't connect it to the grid. If we could connect it to the grid, we'd build it tomorrow. And so the grid connection aspect is becoming really critical to your ability to build new renewables. And that regime that controls the pricing and capital investment of Transpower is designed for stable state. It's not designed for growth. So it's not designed for building a grid ahead of the curve. It's designed for efficient deployment of capital to keep the costs of the existing grid to their lowest possible level for customers.
Yeah. I don't want to keep going back to Huntly, but that point around grid connection, that's got to be a positive attribute for Huntly. I know you're doing some battery work out there and potentially some other developments, but that's a big connection to the grid that's already there that must fast track the possibility to keep doing something at Huntly into the future.
Yeah, Huntly has 3 really important ingredients. Okay, first of all, it can store enormous amounts of energy. Second, it's the only place in New Zealand with a skilled workforce like that.
Right.
And third, it's a massive grid connection. So Huntly is very clearly part of our Gen 35 strategy and how we make the most of that big grid connection, around about 1,400 megawatts of grid connection, and it's two-way. So if you take our battery, for example, we're building it for about $135 million. Other similar batteries have cost up to $180 million on greenfield sites. And the reason that we can do it so efficiently is because we have a big grid connection, we have an established site, and we have a skilled workforce already in residence. And so you bring that together, and we're saving about $50 million of capital investment on the same asset.
And is there more you could do there in terms of that battery? Could that go bigger?
So we're building a 200 megawatt hour battery, and we can fit up to 800 megawatt hours on that site. All of the plant that we bought to support that battery was bought so that it could support 400 megawatt hours of battery, so stage 1 and stage 2. So when we build stage 2, subject to battery prices, we would expect it to be more efficient deployment of capital in stage 1, because effectively everything's already in place.
Yeah. I've got some rooftop solar actually, and I'm sort of wondering about introducing batteries. What is that pricing or that technology like of whether it's the panels, whether it's batteries? Is it getting cheaper for the everyday person to access? Obviously, it sounds like it potentially is getting cheaper at that scale side, but is it getting cheaper, do you think, overall as well?
Yep. The reality of building rooftop solar and battery
Yeah.
is it's going to be cheaper tomorrow than it was today. So choosing your time of entry is going to be, critical to how the financials work out for you.
Right.
The Electricity Authority is consulting at the moment on lifting the volume that you can export back to the grid.
Right.
We're an active buyer of rooftop solar electricity.
Okay.
Because of our big flexibility, we can balance our portfolio against that. And as I said, in January, 5% of our total generation came from rooftop solar this year. And so my comment on it, I have rooftop solar ambitions myself for my house, and I'm constantly monitoring the financials and the payback. For me, it's sitting at around 10 years at the moment, which is just a little bit long.
Yep.
If it gets closer to 5 years, then that's when you'll see me investing in that. And absolutely, I'll be putting a battery alongside it as well.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I think a lot of people are at is you got to really be committed to staying in your house, don't you? If it's 10 years kind of payback, and most of us might get itchy feet in that time and want to move.
And the challenge from a real estate perspective is houses with rooftop battery and rooftop solar and battery aren't getting additional premium in the market at this point in time. That may change as time goes by. But from my perspective, I think the numbers need to get closer down to sort of that 5 to 7 year range to make it worthwhile to invest.
No, it'll be interesting to see if that, but it feels like the technology curve is moving so quickly. The panels will become more efficient, won't they? The batteries will. We look at EVs, it's just amazing sort of leaps and bounds we're having. So it's bound to flow through into household batteries, isn't it?
And that'll be the next big evolution, is when you have genuine E to G or EV to grid opportunities.
Right.
So if you can use the battery in your car instead of having to put an extra battery on your house, that's going to be a major leap forward in terms of rooftop solar and battery.
So that could be your storage battery unit.
It will be in the future. It will be your storage battery. Yeah.
I just want to bring it back to end here, back to you a little bit. You've been in the top seat for a few years now, and I think hopefully you're really proud of. I think from a market's perspective, the way that you have articulated the Genesis story to the market, it possibly was a little bit lost in the past, and I think you've really found a clear story, maybe not a niche, but certainly a marketable and articulatable story of where you fit in the energy system. I think that's really great. But I just wanted to sort of ask you, being a listed CEO is not the easiest job in the world. You're out there and you have to do things like this. So is there something that you've really enjoyed about being a listed business and a listed CEO, and something that you find a little bit challenging about being listed as well?
Yeah, look, I think energy overall is a bit like oxygen. People only notice it when it's not there. And if we're in the news, it's because it wasn't there. And it wasn't there in winter 2024. So the last sort of 12 to 18 months has been challenging. There's no question about that. But it's been an awesome challenge to lean into. It's part of an energy transition. You can't expect to transition from the old to the new and not to have bumps along the way. And energy, there are no high wealth, low energy countries on the planet. Energy equals prosperity. So it's a critical element of the good of New Zealand today and into the future. One of the things for me that I've always been really good at is thinking intergenerationally. And when you're in private equity, it's very easy to think intergenerationally and act intergenerationally. In a publicly listed space, you have to balance the short with the long. And I think that is one of the challenges that the energy sector has grappled with, and not just the energy sector, but infrastructure in New Zealand overall. And I think there's an awakening in New Zealand that we've lived off the shoulders of previous generations, intergenerational thinking and investment. And our responsibility now, whether it's leaders in the industrial sector or whether it's politicians across New Zealand, is for those that come after us, we have to rediscover how to think and invest in an intergenerational way. And if we don't, the resilience of New Zealand for our children and grandchildren won't be available to them, and they'll all move to Australia. And so the great thing about being a publicly listed CEO is that you're able to engage and tell that story in a way that balances the short and the long term. The challenge with being a publicly listed CEO is you have to tell that story in a balanced way.
That's right.
Because your investors want to get paid,
Yeah,
and quite rightly so.
Yeah.
But you've got to make sure that not only are they getting paid this year, but they're going to get paid in 10 years' time as well.
Yeah, it is. It's always been the listed sort of company, not problem, but challenge, isn't it? Is people want next year's earnings to be good. They want the dividend to be good. They want progress. But in an infrastructure like business, whether it's electricity, the ports, the airport, those sorts of things, you've got to look a decade ahead, don't you? And it's just kind of...
You're investing in long-dated assets, 20 to 50-year assets, and the return plays out over longer periods of time. And so you've got to balance today with tomorrow, absolutely.
What about relaxing? Like it's a hard job. If I need to relax, I jump on the ride on mower and sort of spend a few hours with the earmuffs on and in the peace and quiet away from everyone. Is there anything you do to kind of get away and take a bit of time to yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, son of a dairy farmer,
right.
Made hay every summer for 15 years of my life. Love nothing more than getting on a ride-on mower or a tractor and cutting grass or doing something like that. But for me these days, anything on, in or under the sea is where I relax. So keen boater, keen diver, keen fisherman, love recreation around the coast in New Zealand. That's kind of my happy place. Yeah.
Brilliant. And when we're finished filming, you can tell me your good spots to go fishing. See if you've got any secret ones. I'm sure you do. But hey, look, Malcolm, thanks for your time and thanks for letting us into your beautiful offices again. It's great to catch up and hear a different sort of side of the business and get a bit of insight in how our bills work, how you think about your business long term, and hopefully we'll see a few more changes come through in the sector that are positive for everyone. Yeah,
thanks very much for your time. And what this group of people are building here at Genesis is a company where energy never stops. And for our shareholders, that means earnings will never stop as well.
Yeah, brilliant.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you.